Hey everybody. Hi, this is Theresa Barron and I'm coming to you live all the way from Columbus, Ohio. And today we're going to be talking about planning and building your legacy. We just reworked this whole piece because we want to make sure it's relevant, that the material is as actually digestible, that you can utilize it and it makes sense for you and your family. Aaron, can we do a check here to make sure that people can hear me? Okay, great. All right, great. So let me turn this down. As always, Erin Liggins is in the background. She is my sidekick. She helps me to get this whole thing together and pull it together. Today we're in a different space. I'm actually painting this room right now. It's been painted, but I'm setting it up and we're getting ready to just give me another space where I can just hide away and get some things done. And I'm actually at 941 Bryce Road, and I welcome you to today. It's live. Ask Theresa, and if you're seeing it in replay, bottom line is that we put it out there multiple times to make sure that as many people as possible can actually get their hands on this. If you know somebody who can use the information that we present here today, please share it with folks because we are trying to make sure that we circulate it. All the things that we give you are free. And let me just properly introduce myself. My name is Theresa Barron. I am the broker and the owner of Take a Look Real Estate Brokers. And I've been around for about 25 years, coming up here real soon. That's almost 3 decades. And so during that period of time, I have amassed a wealth of knowledge. And today, like I said, we're going to be talking about planning and building your legacy. And I'm going to use personal stories to drive home the point and to really make the case as to why we got to pay attention to this. We really have to pay attention to this. So let's first just premise everything by saying in the next 30 to 40 years, incrementally, we're going to have the largest transfer of wealth take place in this country and all over the world, actually. It starts with the baby boomers, and a lot of times I will reference the baby boomers because there are 80 million of them, and they're together combined. They have $30 trillion that will be transferring to both the X generation and the millennials, and this will impact everything we do. And how it gets transferred matters because in some communities, those transfers are not going to take place. So really important that we begin to understand what it's going to take to make sure that the transfer actually gets to the people that we want it to get to versus the transfer ending up in a system like in the hands of attorneys, in the hands of the courts, in the hands of trustees that don't necessarily represent the interests of the people who are delivering these assets to be transferred. Okay, so I'm going to tell you my father's story because I have personal firsthand experience in this whole probate transfer of wealth system. If you're not familiar, probate is the court system where across the country assets end up if something happens to you. And let me preface it by saying I am not an attorney. I've got a lot of qualifications, but one of them is not law. I am not an attorney, but however, my personal experiences have taught me some great lessons, and I'm going to share my story with you. In the last 3 weeks, before I share that story, I will tell you that I've been down at probate court, which is why it's heavily on my mind. Down at probate court, just about 3 or 4 days a week, looking at the case files. And the reason why we do that is because a lot of real estate, as a matter of fact, I want to say $80 trillion nationwide in the United States is transferring through the probate system. And a lot of people don't understand that they can avoid the probate system if they have a plan in place. So I'm going to tell you my father's story because it is very relevant in terms of the topic that I'm talking about today. On March 10th, let me get it right, March 10th, 1999. So I'm taking myself all the way back to the date of March 10th, 1999. My father and I had a conversation, and it was earlier in the daytime. The craziest thing about this conversation is that, I was really just excited to share with him that I was graduating from Ohio Dominican University. And in this story, just understand that that was a big deal because as far as my father and my mother were concerned, I was on my fifth baby, and that, didn't necessarily make for a great life. They were always business owners and entrepreneurial in nature. And, bottom line is that to have a young daughter at that time, I was probably 1999, I'd have been 33 years old or so. And, fifth baby. So it was my husband and I and 4 kids and 1 on the way. But I was calling my dad to let him know that even though I wasn't following the prescribed plan, I was graduating and I wanted him to come to that graduation. And the first thing he told me was, listen, babe, we want to talk to you about this building. You had all this floor, this VCT tile installed, and we got to talk about the bill. Now, let me tell you, my father owned a business called Carpet Talk. As I said, he was an entrepreneur. He had been in that business since around 1973, and this was 1999, 25, 26, 27 years later. And actually, he had, let me get the numbers right, was 27 years. So whatever year that was prior to 1999, that's probably 1972 or so. He had bought a franchise called Carpet Talk. It was located on Morrison Cleveland Avenue at 4345 Cleveland Avenue. And it was at that point in time, at the time that the last conversation I had with him, he had opened up another space where it was about 6,000 square feet of real estate. And he operated his business out of that location. And he told me, the last thing he said to me was, I'm so proud of you. I'll be at your graduation. And I'm going to talk to you about this VCT tile bill. And I was like, I'm not ready to pay that bill. We can talk about it in the future. I said, besides that, there was work that needed to still be done. So he said, well, I'm going to have my secretary give you a call, and I'll schedule to come out there so that we can look at this, see what needs to be done, and then I'll go ahead and start you on the bill plan so you can pay this bill. Well, I did get the call from the secretary. It was about an hour and a half later, and it was a call that I was expecting to receive since he had warned me that I was going to get this call. And it wasn't the call that I was expecting. I was expecting the secretary to talk to me about when my father was going to be coming to visit to take a look at the work that had been done. Instead, what I got was, Theresa, there's been an emergency. Your father has been carried to St. Anne's Hospital. We think he's had a heart attack. He just collapsed. And one of the guys who was working at the place of business took the time to resuscitate, to try to bring him back, to try to give him whatever it's called, whatever you do when you pump the heart and breathe into the face and try to keep him viable. The squad came. They again started working on him right then and right there. They worked on him for about 20 minutes and then took him off to the hospital to see if they could revive him. This is when I got the phone call to get to the hospital. What's really crazy is that after the fact, I heard from my brother, my younger brother, who told me that my father had already planned he was planning on his retirement, and he said to my brother, he thought he had 10 good years left. This is where he was. This is where his mind was. He really thought that, it was time to retire. He started to think about the things that he wanted to do as a retiree, and he purchased some money, some property in Greece. He was just ready to kind of settle down and wind things up and just kind of enjoy the fruits of his labor. But this day, that would be the last time I would speak to him. So I got to the hospital. I rushed over to the hospital. And if anybody knows anything about hospitals, when you walk in to the triage desk and you're coming to see someone, they already have a list of what's going on with the most critically ill or those who are having trouble. And the crazy thing is that they set me in a room where on the door it read quiet room. I didn't know what the quiet room was. I wasn't, all I wanted to do was see my father. And when I went in that room, it was isolated from everyone else. I was sitting in the room. And for me, it was just really uncomfortable. And I started getting real anxious because nobody was coming in to talk to me. And they had sat me in this room, and it was sort of instructed, go the Barron family is meeting in the quiet room. I turned around and saw the cell phone or the telephone in there. It's actually a telephone. I picked up the phone and started dialing out to see if I could get information by calling into the hospital and asking questions to see if they would release any information that way. It's crazy because I was right there at the hospital. And I began to just feel real irritated, real anxious about the idea that they weren't giving me any information, not over the phone. I was sitting right there. They weren't sharing any information. So I busted out the door in my normal, boisterous self. And I said, listen, I have a right to see my father. They then got on the phone. The triage nurse said, yes, you do, ma'am. Yes, you do have a right to see your father. And he went and got a nurse, called somebody and a chaplain, and both of those people came to me. Now, let me just tell you, I told you I was pregnant at the time. This was in 1999. I was 7 months pregnant as I was visiting my father. And it's relevant because shock. I was about to go into shock, not unknowingly. So on the right side was the chaplain. On the left side was a hospital worker, maybe a nurse. I'm not sure. All I recall is that she was a very sturdy, Black woman who was standing by my side and walking and talking me down a hallway and into what was then the trauma room at that point in time. I really didn't know what they were doing, and I really couldn't hear what they were saying. Somehow my ears were just not listening. I was just paying attention to where we were going and following their lead to get into this trauma room. Walked into the trauma room and noticed that my father was laying on a table. His feet were uncovered. There was a drape around the middle of his body, and his arms were by his side. And then if you've ever seen a trauma room, they have, everything, every apparatus that a hospital has, tubes and harnesses and things that, hold things up. It just everything that you could use, IV things, hangers, I don't know, just those kinds of medical equipment. And what I noticed, because I didn't hear what they said, is I noticed that nothing was attached to my father. His face wasn't covered. His arms were by his side. His feet were exposed. And I'm looking around, and the chaplain is on one side, the nurse is on the other. And what they're trying to tell me, and they had told me as we were walking through the halls, is that they were so sorry about my loss. Come to find out that at that very moment, it all kind of landed on me at the same time. And I found myself on the floor sobbing like a baby who just, had just been abandoned. I felt literally lost at that moment. It was really, really, really a shocking experience because I had just talked to my father. I had just had a conversation. We were just planning for him to attend my graduation. And instead of getting the call to invite him back out to my shop, the building that I had purchased and so forth, instead of getting that call, what I got was a call that was completely unexpected. And I get to the hospital only to find out that I didn't make it there in time and that my father was now no longer here with us. So I lost my father in that moment. They got my mother on the phone to get me calm and to try to bring me back into some reasonable status where I wasn't just sobbing uncontrollably. And I began to pull myself together because now I thought that was the worst thing that could ever happen. But what I found out was that's not the worst thing that can ever happen. What happened after his death was even more tragic than what I could have ever imagined. See, my father owned a building at 4345 Cleveland Avenue plus the business. He also owned a high-level condo, a very luxury, high-end condo in Westerville. He owned the property that I was born in at 1377 East 19th Avenue. And then he had a property that was owned by my grandmother who predeceased him that he was in charge of as the executor of the estate for my grandmother. So all of these different components were critical. That's what we had left of his legacy besides our memories. At the time of his death, he had $2.3 million worth of set aside contracts because he was a minority contractor, outstanding, along with all the inventory stored in his building. The crazy thing about it is that he had just remarried about a year and a half prior to the date of his death. He actually married in October of 97 and he died in March of 99. And, you know, it not to say that his wife wasn't entitled, but his entire legacy was now in jeopardy in terms of making certain that his children and the people that had been surrounding him his entire life were going to be able to inherit his legacy, the work that he did. Really, really, really was not about money. It was just about someone had lived and worked for 30, 40 years and amassed, just a substantial estate. And at the end of the day, he had no will, which meant that his estate was going to be administered in a manner in which there's very little concern about the family members and preserving value. There was nothing but confusion between the new wife and the children of the family. She was named at some point as an administrator, and it became a tug of war and just an absolute brutal knockdown, drag out court battle to remove her as administrator of the estate. All of the work that he did spent for the last 27 years at Carpet Talk, which was his franchise, a business that he had owned and worked in every single day. I mean, a business that he essentially substituted and gave up his family for. All of the work would be reduced to pennies on the dollar. And ultimately, nobody benefited except the attorneys, because it just kept going and kept going. And by the end of the day, the creditors and the attorneys, the business was dissolved within 6 months of his death. The attorneys submitted bills for $48,000, $50,000. The children were left with nothing, pretty much nothing. We didn't get the benefit of our father's work. The wife, she inherited the house, but that's pretty much it. And everything else was sold for nickels and dimes. And I tell you my father's story because literally, like I said in the beginning, he thought he was going to live for at least another 10 years. He figured by his calculations, he'd live for another 10 years, 10 good years, and he'd be able to enjoy some of the fruits of his labor. He failed to do some of the most basic things. He had a little bit of life insurance. He had about $10,000 in life insurance, and that was just enough to get him buried. I don't know if you know what the cost of burial are, what the costs are today, but it's pretty expensive to get somebody buried. And like I said in another video, we see a lot of people taking up collections. What I want you to take from this is that for me, you can learn from the lessons that I learned, that you want to make sure that you have your will in place. You want to make sure that you consult, like I said, I'm not an attorney, consult with an attorney, and or there's a way to do it yourself. Go to LegalZoom or any of the online systems and you can get a will done yourself so that you can protect your family. The last thing we want to do is to constantly start over. And you know what I mean by that. I mean, not allow your children to step on your shoulders and all the work that you've already done. Instead, to have them start from square one. That's the last thing we want to do. Particularly in the African American community, there are some wide discrepancies. Most of the work that's done is not transferred to the next generation. So we have generation after generation starting over, starting from square one. We can always prevent this. There are so many methods to preventing this, but it does take some planning. It takes some effort on your part to prevent this kind of thing from happening on a regular and consistent basis. in your family. So let your family members know, let them know what your intentions are. Make sure that you speak with a qualified professional, an attorney, to get this thing in writing and get it down. I'm going to also recommend that you take whatever you get. Thanks for putting that up there, Seville. Whatever it is that you decide that your will is, make sure you file it with the probate court so that people don't have to scurry around and wonder where to go look for things. Let me look and see what else we want to get into with this. I always get really emotional because it was my dad, and I learned a lot of lessons from it. But most importantly, the lesson that I learned is that I don't want to put my children or my family in that sort of situation. Sometimes I think that we just simply fear the idea, and we think we can always do things tomorrow. But in his case, there was no tomorrow. The same day that I spoke with him last was his last day on earth. And I just tell you that it's so critical and so important that when you're working with your family members, that you make sure that you make this plan. We are all once for certain not going to be here, in 100 years. So better to do it now than to wait. Now, Aaron, did I hit all these points, or is there some other things I need to mention? Because, this is a whole lot to talk about.
I think that you hit all the points.
Okay.
I think that you hit all the points. I think you got through it very well. I think you just need to kind of give a little bit, how they can contact you.
Right.
And that's it.
So let me just give you, so let me give them some information. Our primary business is real estate. This is what we do. But over the years, we've spent about 25 years building relationships with clients and family and customers, and delving into the community. And what we've learned is, yes, and Seville just said it, even in our own family, even in our own groups, we lose people all the time. We can lose people at any time, at any moment. And Seville, I don't think I want to really tell your whole story. I don't want to tell your whole story because I really do believe that that is a story that you need to tell. But I will say that somebody that's very close to me, lost a loved one in the most shocking manner in one day. It all happened just overnight. And I will bring her or allow her to tell that story, or if she gives me permission to share it, I'll share it at some point. But completely unexpected. Very young man, vibrant man. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are prepared. Age should not stop you from getting things in order. Just because you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 years old, you should still be prepared. Make sure that you have your things in order. I will tell you as well, we don't just sell real estate because of the history. We have a database of the clients that we've talked to and worked with over the last 25 years, and you would be surprised how many of them are no longer with us. And because, in the beginning, we didn't have the licensure to protect them with life insurance or products out there that could really benefit the families and save their properties, nor did we consider that something that we should delve into until we began to see how it could have impacted and benefited them over this last 20, 25 years. So we do offer the services if it is something that you need to have. Further, we are also certified. I just recently got the certification, although I've been working with attorneys in the States for years. But I'm a certified probate real estate specialist. And basically what we do is we help families to liquidate estates. We prefer to help families on the front end to prepare to stay out of the probate court versus coming in on the back end and helping them to maximize and make sure that those estates are protected in terms of liquidating the assets. So one other thing, we have a lot of new business owners out there. And one of the things that would have helped me dearly to save my father's business, had we even had the gumption or the knowledge to do so, one of the things that really would have assisted is if he would have had key leader insurance. Because we didn't have the expertise in the construction world that he was operating in, doing really big projects like the Center of Science and Industries flooring, Ohio State University's flooring, all of these set aside contracts, big deals, contracts. We didn't have the expertise. Had we had key leader insurance, we could have put the right people in place. In other words, bought someone who was a professional in his field of expertise to substitute to get the jobs done so that we could have preserved the business. So if you have a business, a family business, and you are the primary driver of the business, and basically without you, the business does not operate or does not run, then I'm going to recommend that you also consider having some key leader insurance so that if in the event that anything happens to you, that your business is able to survive, because the insurance will help to put someone in place that can continue to run the business until decisions are made and gives you the opportunity to liquidate it or sell it in a more viable manner. In my father's case, it was nickels on the dollar, pennies on the dollar. It was really the most heart-wrenching thing to watch them auction off all of his assets in a day's time, and it took 27, 30 years or just a lifetime to build. So, this is one of those moments where you just tell it like it is, so hopefully people can feel you and really get the information. If you or someone needs to get these things in place, our primary business is to protect families when it comes to life insurance. We're not here to upsell you anything substantial. We're here to make sure that you get what you need. I want you to give us a call at 614-778-8503. If you have loved ones that have estates that have not been filed, that need to be probated, and there's real estate involved, you can also give us a call, because that is one of our niche businesses. And again, you can call or text at 614-778-8503. We only deal in the state of Ohio as it relates to real estate, but with insurance, it's a different type of licensure where we can serve just about nationwide. So we want to be here as a resource. If you have questions, if there's things that we need to answer for you, just want to, have a conversation about what's going on with your particular situation. That's what we're here for, just to offer value and information so that you don't have to go through some of the things that people like me went through with my mom being sick and my dad dying, just protecting families. All right, guys, so I'm going to get off here, and I want you to have a phenomenal day and just kind of consider some of these points. Hopefully it means something to you. Hopefully it brings you value. I appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back next week. This is Theresa Barron on Ask Theresa. And Aaron, anything else we need to share with them? They can go to YouTube and see all the previous live videos that we've done.
Yeah, have them subscribe to the YouTube channel. And for anyone who is an agent who is looking to develop a six-figure business, have them join the Platinum Success Facebook group.
Yes. So if you're an agent, you see, we do it is about real estate, and it's about quality of life and really serving the community at the highest levels. That's just kind of what we do. What we want you to know is that if you are feeling like you are not kind of getting where you need to be in the real estate business as an agent, definitely join our Platinum Success group. We will share with you what we know in terms of how to become the best that you can be and really serve your community. There are 8,000 agents in Franklin County. You can be anywhere in the United States, and we will give you great information for free, no cost involved whatsoever. So what we want you to do is just go ahead into the groups in the Take a Look Real Estate Brokers Facebook page, log into that with your realtor ID, and we will approve you to come in and kind of get some of the training that's free. The other thing is that if you are not an agent, but you want to get the rest of the live feed and the things that we put out here, or you found what we're saying valuable, you can go to Take a Look Real Estate Brokers YouTube page. Gosh, it's so many pages. Go to the YouTube page and subscribe, and you'll get notified every time we upload a new video, just in case you don't catch us here. We really hope to, again, be of significant value to all the people that we come in contact with. Again, it's Theresa Barron. I will see you next week, and I want you to have a phenomenal rest of your week on this hump day. It's kind of getting fall-like, right? Sometimes it's good and sometimes not so good, because we had a rainy, funky fall. Anyway, I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye. It's Theresa.